Thank you, Anne. Um, Thank you, Anne. For those, for those who may not know me, my name is Bill Valerio. I'm the director of Woodmere, and I'm incredibly excited to be here with you all tonight. You who are some of our most loved family members, generous supporters of the institution.
I went there so long. I was like
Just some
pretty.
housekeeping. We hope you'll all mute. I'm about to mute myself, but we hope you will all mute as well.
This is just out of courtesy for the fellow attendees of the Zoom call. But Anne is recording this Zoom meeting. We're glad to share it. We'll post it on Woodmere's website. In addition to that, I'm sure people are going to have questions, and the way we thought we would handle questions, just so that we can get through the presentation, is ask that you put questions into chat. Anne will monitor the chat, and then she'll be the person that asks questions on everyone's behalf at the end of the Zoom call. So again, I'm Bill Valerio. I'm honored to be here with you tonight. I thank you all for being part of Woodmere's family. It could not be a more exciting moment. And what we're looking at on the screen right now is a rendering from our architects of what Maguire Hall will look like a year from now as we cut the ribbon and walk inside. I'm going to run through this, and then I'll be glad to answer questions at the end, again, through the chat for anybody who's joining, for anyone who's joining right now. I wanted to describe that Woodmere will remain one museum, although we will have two near adjacent sites. The main building, Woodmere's main building, and again, we're asking everybody to mute themselves.
Talking about Maguire Hall. I'm listening to it.
I think I recognize that voice. Woodmere will remain one museum and two distinct buildings, and the two buildings will have very different functions. The main building will continue to host special exhibitions. Those are the changing exhibitions that happen in the large Cook and Del Bueno Rotunda shaped gallery. The Founders Galleries dedicated to 19th century art will continue to exist there, and I think that we will be able to include more experiences with 18th and 19th century art in the main building, public events, music events, film, other programs will continue to take place in the main building as they do now, and the painting studio for adults, the painting studio program, will remain in place in the beautiful carriage house on the main site. Maguire Hall will focus on 20th and 21st century art. It will have a cafe component to it. There will be lectures and event rentals of 50 people, I would say, at the maximum. And there will be a children's art studio. And I'll show some renderings of the children's art studio. Children need other things in a studio. They use different materials. Adults use razor blades. Children use scissors that have rounded corners. Adults use oil paint. Children use finger paint and other materials. But to have two studios set up for adult artists and children artists will be a real game changer for Woodmere, and it'll be a one-of-a-kind kind of experience in the Philadelphia region. I talked about the main building a little bit, and I have always been inspired by photographs of what some of our galleries looked like in 1910 when Woodmere opened to the public for the first time. And you can see in the lower black and white composite photograph from the time of Charles Knox Smith's opening of Woodmere, what our Schneider Gallery, the Ethel M. Schneider Gallery, looked like originally. And as we move more and more elements into Maguire Hall, I'm imagining we can pull out parts of our collection that rarely get on view and offer this kind of Beaux-Arts 19th century Gilded Age experience with the arts. And of course, I'm showing how we show a lot of this art today in our parlor gallery or our founders gallery. And these are among the most popular parts of the Woodmere experience. And I'm looking forward with Maguire Hall up and online that the future next phase of Woodmere is to really focus on expanding the experience in the main building. I wanted to introduce Frances M. Maguire, who is inspiring us in our renovation of the building. Franny Maguire, as she was known as Franny, to the art world and to her friends all across Philadelphia, was a trustee of Woodmere, of very long standing, a member of our collections committee over a long amount of time, and with a generous lead gift of $10 million from the Maguire Foundation, we are naming our building Maguire Hall in honor of Frances M. Maguire. The formal name is Frances M. Maguire Hall for Art and Education. And on the right of this, on the left of this slide, you'll see some of the language that we've devised to honor Franny in a plaque that we will have made for the exterior of the building. And you can see a bronze scroll. It's actually in the process of being fabricated as we speak. I've always been inspired by the honorary plaques in 30th Street Station. These nice, clean Art Deco scrolls that honor members of the Pennsylvania Railroad who were instrumental in bringing a transportation system through, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the rest of the country. And it's really nice to have the opportunity to be inspired by that in honor of Franny. I said I would introduce our architects, and here they are. Matthew Baird of Matthew Baird Architects in the lower left is our design architect, the lead architect on the project. Jeff Krieger in the center, wearing the blue sweater. Jeff is a member of our community here in Chestnut Hill, and Jeff is our local architect. He's overseeing construction and also managing the relationship between the institution and the city as we go through zoning and various code regulations. And Darren Damone on the right of the screen down below, Darren Damone of Andropogon is our landscape architect. And again, I feel like we couldn't be in better hands than with the three of them. The rendering that you see in this slide shows what our porch will look like when it's all nicely cleaned up with stone steps. And I've just circled the plaque that will honor Franny just to the left of the front door of the building. But what's so exciting to me is the renovation of the porch as you see it there. To get into the renovation, one of the big changes, and I really think a transformative gesture right away as we've started renovating the building is to address the porch. Now, the Sisters of St. Joseph, who owned the building for 100 years, the building was built in the 1850s as a residence for the Trotter family. It was purchased in the 1890s by the Harrison family, and it was acquired in 1922 by the 22 or 24 by the Sisters of St. Joseph. They had as many as 25 sisters, 25 women living in the building at the peak of its time of being occupied as a residence. And so they needed interior space. And so the exterior porches that wrapped around the building were enclosed. And you can see various views of the building and how those porches were enclosed. They were functionally enclosed to make for spaces that were useful on the inside. From the outside, I think you can see the building becomes heavier, and something of the elegance of that Victorian unit is lost by the enclosure of those porches. And this slide, and again, these are slides taken just about a week ago, you can see that simply by removing the enclosures on the porch, the building becomes lighter. You can see that central cube of the Victorian core of the building, and it opens up spectacular views through the porch to the north. And I believe my next slides show more of that. So you can see these beautiful porches open up, they become lovely public spaces. We've not only removed the exterior walls, but the sisters had put sheetrock walls up against the stone that was the original exterior of the building. We did not know what we would necessarily find. I mean, we did some spot tests, but we didn't know if those original stone walls would be in good condition when we removed the sheetrock and all the other pipes and electric things and all of that were there hidden under the sheetrock. One of the really wonderful surprises was none of the stone was painted. The mortar is in great condition. The stone itself is in great condition, and these spaces open up. The other thing that we realized on opening up the porch, and you can see, I think, how the building becomes more welcoming, it becomes lighter, is that it restores the view to the north. And up and down Germantown Avenue and in Northwest Philadelphia, all of the great houses that were built on this ridge had porches designed to capture that northern view. And you can see it there just on the upper left, just standing on that porch. You can see a little piece of the architecture in the lower left. But then zooming in, you have that view north. And if you think of Woodmere's main building, which lost its north porch when the museum was expanded in the 1950s, which we're glad happened, but Woodmere's main building, the Morris House at the Morris Arboretum, Laverock, when you think of these great houses that were all built in that same line, they all had these porches facing north to capture the sunsets and that great view. And I think one of the gifts that being able to restore this building has been to be able to restore that view north and to make this northmost porch a beautiful public space. Now, I also want to say that I'll be showing a lot of renderings today, and I want everyone to know that these are renderings, some of which have changed in their details. And so, for example, I had originally asked our architects to put ceiling fans on the porch because I actually think that that's quite nice. They convinced me that, in terms of the historical nature of what this porch is, that I should really not be thinking about ceiling fans on the porch. And so, although you see ceiling fans in the renderings, they have been cut in the name of wanting to make the porch seem more in keeping with its historical feeling. And these are the kinds of trade-offs that we've made as we've made decisions, about the design and renovation of the building. So just a caveat to everything that I'm going to say, please, understand that, some of the details in these drawings are not going to be exact to the realization of the building. But I think opening up the porches has been a real game changer for Maguire Hall. I also wanted to point out, and I think you can see it in this rendering of the porch with the fans in the upper right, off to the back, a giant bronze figure. One of the things I'm very excited about, and the reason for having this building is to be able to create a showcase for the art and artists of Philadelphia. I'm very excited that we will be installing a monumental 12-foot sculpture by the artist Ned Hoffman. Ned Hoffman was an artist a sculptor of Philadelphia of the 50s, 60s, 70s, a sculptor who had a terrific career, I would say more so with monumental commissions outside of Philadelphia at places like St. John the Divine in New York. And I'm very excited that we'll be able to install his large-scale sculpture of a male figure looking up to the heavens, as if perched on a cement retaining wall off of the back of our building. And at the moment, the maquette for the sculpture, this is a sculpture that was intended to be realized in large scale, but was not in the artist's lifetime. He made a maquette hoping that one day it would be enlarged. And enlarging sculpture, frankly, has never been easier than it is today. The maquette is at the Johnson Atelier that some of you may know is right outside of Trenton, New Jersey. And these are some of the recent computer renderings that they've sent us as a scan is being made of the 10-foot sculpture, 120 inches. And you can see the size of the maquette up to the figure's knees of, in relation to the large scale sculpture. The Johnson Atelier will digitally print in foam resin a 120-inch sculpture, which will then be used to create a mold for a bronze casting of the sculpture. So it's incredibly exciting to me to have this wonderful work of art at Maguire Hall. And I'm particularly excited about it because of the relationship this sculpture has to a work of art that is probably the most famous sculpture, or is maybe the most famous sculpture in Philadelphia, the monument to the fallen heroes of the Pennsylvania Railroad, created by Walker Hancock, installed in 30th Street Station in 1952. At a time when Ned Hoffman had just completed his studies at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, where Walker Hancock was his teacher. And Hoffman and Hancock became very close friends. They had both served in the US Army in World War II. Walker Hancock was famously a monument man, and so if you've read about the Monument Men or seen the pretty good movie about it, they rescued works of art that had been looted by the Nazis. Ned Hoffman was a younger artist, was a soldier in the Second World War, attended PAFA on the GI Bill, and that's how he and Hancock came together. And I do believe that Hoffman's sculpture is very much inspired by the Hancock sculpture. It also comes from the mid-1950s, and it's also related to the Second World War. And this gesture is like, how can humanity mess itself up in such terrible ways? So I love works of art that speak to each other across the city and across space, even beyond the city. So I'm excited about this work of art. I'm also excited as we come around to the front of the building. We were just looking at the back. This is our architect's rendering of the entrance plaza to Maguire Hall, what we're calling our arrival terrace. And something I'm incredibly excited about is the installation of a sculpture that you see in life-size, well, it's a life-size sculpture. Sweet Grapes is the title, by the artist Harriet Frischmuth, who was one of the leading artists of the Philadelphia 10, an artist of Philadelphia of national and perhaps international reputation, leading figure in figurative public sculpture. This is a fountain figure that we've had at Woodmere, and we're building a fountain for her in front of Maguire Hall. These are the sorts of commissions that made Harriet Frischmuth famous. She was commissioned to make sculptures, fountain sculptures like this for great homes across the country. And how fabulous to have one of her works installed exactly like that here in Philadelphia. And Harriet Frischmuth is interesting for about a million reasons. She was part of the circle of Violet Oakley. She was a leading woman's voice in the arts at a time when especially public sculpture was not an area where many women were championed and successful. And this too is a sculpture that I believe makes a dialogue with some of the great public sculpture that we have in the city. Harriet Frischmuth felt very competitive with Rodin, and I don't think it's an accident at all that her Sweet Grapes, which is the figure of a dancer who's twisting around in a kind of in this kind of twisting shape. It's called Sweet Grapes, and she's stomping on grapes to make wine. So she's kind of a Bacchus figure. She's got a load of grapes slung over her shoulder. And I have to think that Harriet Frischmuth is responding to Rodin's very famous sculpture of Eve, Eve of Adam and Eve, who's covering herself, recoiling back, pulling back in shame on the cover of the Rodin Museum. The mass-bound collection and the Rodin Museum was opened to the public in, I want to say 1928, 1929, and the Frischmuth sculpture is 1930, 1931. So there's no question in my mind that that the two sculptures are related, and I love being able to create that sort of dialogue in the arts that tells you so much about Frischmuth, but also so much about Rodin. We've talked about the back of the building, the front of the building. I wanted to make a nod to the landscape and describe how grateful we are to Janet and John Haas and the Otto Haas Family Trust for making a very generous gift in order to name the grounds of Maguire Hall. I'm showing the landscape plan as devised by Andrew Pogon. As at Woodmere's main building, the parking areas and the hard surfaces will be green in the sense of we will have permeable surfaces, we will have rain gardens to control and manage the stormwater that falls on the site. We will have winter gardens on the Green Tree and Sunset sides of the buildings to shield the parking from the exterior of the site, and also to beautify and enrich the the ecosystem and tree canopy. We will have an open space at that corner of Germantown and East Hampton that will have beautiful opportunities for running around, flying kites and so forth, but also beautiful sightings of monumental sculpture. And then in the back, a sculpture woodland garden that we will create. And here's some place where I feel like I'd be wrong if I didn't say we were originally thinking that back space would be a meadow, and our thinking has evolved thanks to the input of many friends and neighbors who've said, meadows aren't really natural to our area, but woodland gardens are. That if you were just to leave this land alone, it would become a woodland on its own. And that's the kind of approach that we were strongly being encouraged to take, and we listened. You can see a rendering of the parking surface on the bottom, on the right, the open lawn space in the center, and up above, Andrew Pogon's concept for the installation of a really wonderful sculpture. A lot of people have been asking about it, so I thought I would show it and also provide a detail. This is Syntax by the artist Steve Tobin, a giant orb. It's actually quite a big object. I'm going to say 8 feet tall, and it's made out of bronze lettering of the type that might be used to label your house or put numbers on your mailbox. The artist found a huge cache of these things in an abandoned factory and built this ball of energy from these letters. It's why it's called Syntax. It's something that from a distance looks like it might be soft and furry, but actually when you get up close, it's actually quite sharp and angular, and it engages you with this alphabet soup of lettering and a sort of deep vortex that's created by the recession of the letters in space. So very excited that the grounds will be a showcase for some very beautiful sculpture. Um, Foundation work, one of the big projects that has been completed already at Maguire Hall, and an area where we didn't exactly know what we would find. We knew there were parts of the foundation that needed to be reinforced and shored up, especially in the back corner where we're planning to put our elevator. Some of you will remember the building had a small elevator that went 2 floors. That was a 1920s sort of French pensionnaire style elevator that would not be adequate for a public institution. We opted to put the elevator on the back in the rear so as not to literally destroy the beautiful historic spaces on the inside. But that would mean that we would have to do some work on the foundations. And you can see the guys, the cement workers working on it. What I'm happy to report is that that work is completed and there were no terrible surprises that were found. That the areas of the foundation that we thought might be a problem were a little bit of a problem, but they were fixed and there were no additional surprises that occurred as a result of the renovation. Another very big thing that has happened is we have installed new electric and plumbing lines coming into the building. And that's what you see here. You've probably seen giant mounds of soil that have been dug up. The electric and the electric and water come into the building from Sunset. And so there's been a lot of digging there, but the purpose of the digging is to install what you see in the right of the slide. Going into the basement of the building are these various tubes that bring in water and electricity. And this is a very big deal because now that we have new electric and gas service and new water service into the building, the electricians, the plumbers can get to work. What you see in this bottom slide that's kind of sideways, that is the pipe for the water that's going to go into the sprinkler system that needs to be installed. And part of what the biggest part of the renovation that's happening is, the building, had electric, gas, plumbing that dated from before the 1920s. So all of it had to be replaced. And then, of course, it didn't have the sorts of climate control, security, or sprinklering that a contemporary museum would need to have. So, it's not pretty, and I wish we didn't have to have sprinklers, but we do. And what you see there in that photograph of that pipe that kind of has an elbow bend and then comes up a little bit, that is the line for the sprinklers, which, again, is a major achievement to have brought sprinklers, to be able to start the work of snaking the sprinklers all through the building. Here in the lower, you see our hall, and this is already a few weeks ago, but the electric room builds from here and becomes its own unit of, this is the charging station for the building. The other thing that has happened is spaces have been opened up. And you may remember the kitchen on the lowest level facing Green Tree Avenue. This was a kitchen that had not been used for some time. Removing walls and removing decrepit appliances and so forth reveals an absolutely beautiful and large space. And I'm showing this view so that you can see where we hope to go with it, and that is to this beautiful what we call our Love Kids Children's Art Studio, in honor of the Love Kids program that was a favorite project of Franny Maguire's. So we're extremely excited to have a studio for children. And when I mentioned before, children need different things in their art studio than grown-ups do. The point of that little shadowy figure of a little boy on the left shows that those sinks are low. That is not an adult height sink or counter. That's a child's height sink and counter, because a big part of what children learn in art class is how to be a good citizen, how to be creative, but then how to clean up after yourself and let the next person have a good experience. More on the inside, this is a current view of the entrance hall. And what you can see here are several things. We've had to remove most of the plaster throughout the building because it was full of asbestos, and we really had no choice about that. We didn't want to, but to follow, the codes and laws, public safety is of course a top priority of Woodmere's and everyone's. So plaster has been removed throughout a substantial part of the building. But what you can see is that we have preserved and will treat so that it can be kept all of the historic details that make the building a beautiful, gracious home of the 19th century. And I think you can see that in the entrance hall almost better than you can see any place else in the building. And then this is just to give you a sense of where we will be going. With the entrance hall, you can see that it's brightened up. The elevator entrance will be at the back of the entrance hall, and you can see in the distance that the elevator entrance has these carved mirrors that I'll talk about in a minute as the entrance into the elevator, but then also a beautiful light fixture, which, like the mirrors, are salvaged items from the Boyd Theater. So that's going to be a consistent element through our renovation of the building that I'm excited about. And you'll see in this entrance hall, we're planning to install a portrait of Maria Louisa Trotter, the woman with her husband William, who built Maguire Hall in 1855. That's a portrait in Woodmere's collection by Thomas Sully. And we've also commissioned a portrait of Franny, the woman for whom the building is named now. The two ladies of the house. We've commissioned Kassem Amoudi. Kassem is a teacher at Woodmere. He was Franny's favorite teacher. That is not what the portrait will look like, but Kassem is an artist of color and gesture. He loved Franny's smile and the joy that she brought to things. So that is just a kind of a concept placeholder. As you walk into the building, you will encounter Franny Maguire and Maria Louisa Trotter next to each other, speaking over time. And then we'll hang other works of art in the building. Franny Maguire was one of those people who really shaped Woodmere's collection as a trustee. She had deep passions for modernism in Philadelphia, of the circle of Arthur B. Carles, and all of the artists who came through Carles's teaching and through his circles down in generations. As an artist herself, she considered herself part of that cohort in the arts of Philadelphia. And so in this entrance gallery, in Franny's honor, we will be hanging works of art that include her work together with works of artists, like Bill Scott and many others, who are part of this tradition. Some of these artists were Franny's teachers, some of them were her colleagues. She's shown in exhibitions with them across Philadelphia, and that will be an entrance experience for us. And here, I'm just showing a little more detail on the Boyd Theater fixtures because they are truly spectacular. Some of you will know of the Boyd Theater, one of the great Art Deco movie palaces of America. There was a substantial effort to save it. It was not. It has since, said goodbye by way of the wrecking ball. But the Friends of the Boyd did an amazing job of salvaging what materials could be salvaged in terms of light fixtures. And you can see a beautiful sconce that will be installed in Maguire Hall. These are materials with gold, with silver. That light fixture, that's not actually gold, it's copper, but it's copper and nickel and beautifully carved glass. The mirrors that you see a detail of are backed with gold, copper, and silver foil. And they are going to really elevate the experience at Maguire Hall, as they did in the amazing interior at the Boyd Boyd Theater. And so I'm incredibly excited about being able to share all this beautiful material from the Boyd Theater with everyone in Maguire Hall. Another thing that I would point out, I mentioned we're now on the second floor. We are over the entrance hall in that central gallery, sort of halfway down, looking towards the front of the building on the second floor. The Sisters of St. Joseph opened up holes in the walls to make more bedrooms. And so we've had to close up doorways. They made bedrooms. They also made a lot of bathrooms. And so what you're seeing here is a space where there used to be 1, 2, 3 more doorways than we want at the museum. And so we're restoring spaces to their original 19th century proportions. And in doing so, we're having to close up doorways that were added by the sisters, because in some cases they took a large space that might have been, one large space, one large, beautiful, generous parlor, or it could have been a bedroom, and they divided it into several rooms. So part of our process has been to restore the space, and part of the work that's happening now is the closing up of some of those doorways and portals, so that our galleries will be the generous large galleries that we want to have. And you can see again, we've been very careful where there were historic moldings on the ceiling, crown moldings, or woodwork around the windows. We've done everything that we could to keep, and we will be restoring those where they exist, such that we can restore them. And here's again the very space that we were looking in our architect's renderings. You can see works of art by Violet Oakley, Alice Kent Stoddard. This will be a gallery dedicated to women artists. And then again, in this beautiful, bright, open space, we have 12 of these very spectacular, they were called Saturn lights, from the Boyd Theater that we will use throughout the second floor of Maguire Hall. And they're killer, wonderful light fixtures, and we're incredibly lucky to have them. And then these are those same windows that you just saw in the front of that gallery. This is what they actually look like today. And then on the right of this slide, I'm showing that throughout the building, important historic woodwork and details, such as the main staircase that you see here, have been protected with different built coverings. And so the elegant main staircase, which is designed by Edward Main, one of the great wood artists of turn of the century Philadelphia. If you were to walk in the building now, you'd see all these boxy things that are there to protect the important historic details. Another gallery rendering from our architects. This will be a gallery dedicated to the work of Arthur Carles and Philadelphia modernism. And you see works by Arthur Carles, Keita Broadhead, Henry McCarter, Jane Piper, other artists that are deeply represented in Woodmere's collection. Another gallery I'm very excited about on this same second floor. We're purpose building a space to accommodate Violet Oakley's beautiful murals, to be able to show them in relation to each other and in the kind of curving space that Violet Oakley originally designed the murals for. And we'll have, some of you may know that the original oculus, the skylight in the ceiling, broke in the 1960s. We're going to have a virtual version of it. We will have a light box on the ceiling with a glowing image of what that light box would have been like on the ceiling, thereby, really completing the mural cycle. And we'll be working from a preparatory drawing that exists in the collection of the Philadelphia Museum of Art as the basis for, basically this light box that we will install on the ceiling of this space. Another gallery, actually a series of galleries that I'm very excited about, 3 galleries dedicated to the jewelry arts of Philadelphia. This has been an expansion of Woodmere's collecting and exhibiting interests that we determined we would do strategically with the expansion into Maguire Hall. I've felt for a long time that the jewelry arts of Philadelphia are one of the exciting stories in the arts of America. And Philadelphia has one of the great stories, having been an English city that attracted silversmiths from London in the 18th century to set up shop, and who gradually evolved from being makers of tablewares to being makers of jewelry and other materials in fine silver craft. I'm showing works by Stanley Lexon, chaired the jewelry department at the Tyler School of Art, and is responsible for inventing. Philadelphia is a city of inventions, right? So, Lexon invented certain techniques in the gold, in using gold to do gold plating on a mass scale. And this is a technology that's used across the jewelry industry of the world today, but it was figured out here in Philadelphia. And I'm showing that with a work by an equally inventive jewelry artist, Doug Bucci, on the right, a beautiful necklace by Doug in Woodmere's collection. An artist who, like his teacher, has pushed the boundaries on creativity using digital printing. But of course, it won't be all of that stuff. And I'm showing a spectacular platinum, diamond, and sapphire bow by the Caldwell Company, a gift to Woodmere from the James Robinson Company in honor of our gala honoree last year, Lita Solis Cohen, and a very spectacular piece of jewelry that displays the extraordinary artistry of the Caldwell Company, being able to kind of craft a flat piece of jewelry that nonetheless seems like a three-dimensional bow is no easy feat, and it's an astonishing object that I look forward again to sharing with everyone. The building is not only coming apart, but it's going back together already. This is the second floor bathroom, and you can see that studs are going up, and the room is being set up to be a bathroom with individual bathroom stalls. And you can see here our plan for what the bathrooms will eventually look like. We will be using this kind of high-tech new material that's a kind of synthetic wall covering that's now commonly used in the architecture of schools and hospitals. You can wash it with bleach and you can print it with anything that you want. And we were inspired to look at artists who dabbled in the artistry of wallpaper, including the great artist of Philadelphia, Edna Andrade. And I'm showing a print in Woodmere's collection by Andrade called Yellow Bounce. She imagined many of her prints could be patterns that could repeat as if on wallpaper. And so we're working with the Andrade, with the Lux Gallery and through the gallery with the foundation. And it seems like everybody's very excited about using these designs in our bathrooms. And you can see here that the idea is that we'll have this kind of wallpaper in the sort of main areas of the bathrooms, and then there will be individual unisex or for men and women, individual toilet stalls, and inside those stalls will have colors that come out of the that are directly related to the colors in the Andrade prints. And with that, I think I've spoken for about 45 minutes. I'm showing a rendering of the generous deck we're going to build off the back of the building, and I'm glad to answer questions. And I know Anne has been monitoring the chat, and I'm glad to take it from here.
Bill, I have answered a few of the questions already, but if anybody else has a question, you don't have to put it in chat. I have muted everybody. You can unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question.
Anne? Hi, Anne?
Yes.
Yeah,
Hi,
it's
Zach.
Pam. I was just more curious. I love seeing the space for the art classes for the
Yes.
children. And I was wondering if there were going to be classes for adults as well.
Very
No.
good question.
Very good question, but we're going to continue to have classes for adults at the main building in the carriage house that's currently our art studio. So that will continue to function as an art studio for grown-ups. This is going to be purpose designed for children, but you know, we're hoping that parents and children will make art together, grandparents, you know, that there will be opportunities for families to be able to participate in the art projects in that space. But the idea here, I mean, just because, you know, the transition from an art studio set up for grown-ups, for adults, and an art studio set up for children is complicated. And, you know, I mean, when I talked about like oil paint versus watercolors, you know, those are two different universes in terms of safety. And, you know, we really have to think about that when we're, you know, we do it now, but the scheduling is quite complicated. The idea of having a purpose-built space for kids will really be a game changer in terms of how we're able to offer education classes in the arts and, you know, expand our capacity in education.
Thank you. Great.
Oh, no, thank you, Pam.
What about the cafe?
Hey, Vivian, good to see you.
Good to see you.
So
Where can I eat?
yeah, so the doors that you see here lead into the dining room of the old house. And beyond the dining room is a space that was originally a butler's pantry, a small kitchen, and it's in fact a kitchen that the sisters used. We will maintain that as a kitchen, and the current plan is that we will have these two, and they're pretty cool. They're as if designed for a boat. They're these rolling carts, and there will be a coffee cart, and that'll be, you can get cappuccino or espresso or a regular coffee, some cookies, maybe a wrapped sandwich or a simple, you know, a fancy yogurt or, you know, something like that. During the day, that will be, you know, the cafe coffee cart. And then for evenings and evening events and so forth, we will have a wine cart. And so that'll have red wine, white wine, Pellegrino, and maybe a cheese plate. So you can, you know, sit on the porch or sit on the deck and enjoy the outdoor space and have a glass of wine.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. So, and the idea, I mean, you can see this beautiful terrace. We want people to use it. So, yeah, the idea is to create a community gathering space.
Bill, we had a question asking if we could see some more slides of the back of the building. I know this is one side of the back, but perhaps you could go back to the back of the building. That was a question that came up.
Let's see. Where do I have the back? I know I have it some. Well, here we go. So here, here are two views of the back of the building: elevator shaft, deck. What's underneath the deck is the loading dock to the building. This kind of dark shape that you see there, that's the darkened space. You know, that would be the loading dock where trucks, you know, drive in and out of the museum. Here's the north porch that I showed earlier, the view from the north porch. And the north porch will have 3 steps that come down onto this deck. And those dining room doors, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but those dining room doors are here, or in the image down below, they're right here, and you can see people, you know, gathered on the space.
Do we have any
It's Roz Reamer.
Anyways,
So I was curious about the porch pictures you showed at the beginning with the rounded steps and the railings kind of, and going up. Yeah.
well, let's see. Let me see if I have it.
Right before there we go. So in this rendering, this could be completely just the way the image looks, but it looks like the railings kind of lead you Like if you needed to hold on to the railing, you'd be kind of right up against the pillars as you came in. Is that not the case, or is that just the way I'm seeing it?
Yeah, so these railings are actually not, these are not the current design of the railings. There were beautiful historic railings with spiraling, turn of the century ironwork. And what we're doing is we're saving those, and they'll have a new top to them. So the actual railing that you hold on to will be new, but the support for the railings will be, they won't be these kind of very simple minimalist designs, but we're going to be keeping the historical railings that were there. And in terms of the placement,
Yeah, that's really my question.
yeah.
Is there space for someone to use the railing and get squeezed through those the next to the pillars, or is that a little tight? Sorry, it's just a small detail, but it caught my
Yeah.
eye.
Yeah,
Folks who need
no,
to hold on.
I appreciate it. I trust my architects and think that the railings will be placed in such a way that a person will be able to navigate the space. But I am writing it down as a question. It's a good eye. I'll also go back. Let's see, where is the? I don't remember if I pointed out here. I guess you can't really see the railings don't play a role in this image, but something to point out as well is that the accessibility ramp is actually this large curving ramp that leads right up onto that deck level. And I think that's a really nice solution that's quite elegant, that, we're hoping that, if you have accessibility issues, it's perfect for you. But we also think that people who don't have accessibility issues, but who might like to just, feel welcomed by that nice curving shape, will also use it. So a lot of thought has gone into making this, entrance really be a wow in terms of just its beauty and the integration of the fountain and the sculpture and the sound of the water, but that it'll also be functional. So I'll bring up the placement of the railings is a good question, and I don't know the answer. If Jeff Krieger were on the call, I'd ask Jeff to answer it, but I don't think Jeff is here. But thank you, Roz.
Thanks.
We've answered all the questions in the chat. You can always email your questions to Bill or to me.
Of course.
And Bill's email is wvalerio@woodmereartmuseum.org. Mine is astandish@woodmereartmuseum.org. And we are happy to answer them. We had a question. Where were the railings originally? One more question. Bill?
So let me see. All right. Let me see if I have. Aha. Okay. Now, I'm trying to see if I can, while sharing a Zoom, if I can expand. So you see here, and I think, Roz, to your question, actually in 3 of these 4 images, you can see the historic railings and it's really nice also to be rid of these orange steps. The sisters have covered the steps with some kind of a coarse material, I'm sure, to prevent slipping, but the color is, I thought, always kind of unfortunate. These just kind of jumped off the building, these orange steps. But you can see the railings where they were placed before. And it looks to me, and to your question, Roz, that the railings are closer to the columns than they are in that rendering. If I could, I don't know if I'm expanding this in any useful way, but it's expanding on my screen.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
It's good.
Bill, one of the other questions was, can you walk between the 2 buildings? And the answer, of course, is yes.
Yes, you can. So there are, depends how big your steps are, but they're between 70 and 80 steps from the corner of Germantown and Bellsville Road to the corner of Germantown and Hampton Road. And we're planning to have a path that will bring visitors diagonally from the entrance buildings of both buildings to those corners. And that will be the easiest path between the two buildings. And, you know, we assume some people will drive. We assume some people will visit both buildings. We assume some people will decide that they want to visit one place and not the other, depending on the occasion.
That's it for the questions in the chat. If we don't have any other questions, please feel free to email us. We're delighted to answer your questions.
Well, I mean, if there are no more questions, I will say thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. And really, it is all of you who have made this incredible project possible. So Anne and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of it. Be well.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Maxine, everyone.
Great.